Welcome to a football show Thursday edition. Can you have a victory Thursday? That is Nick Suss. I am Braden Gall. We are brought to you by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, award-winning Sinkers Beverages. Good Thursday morning, Nick Suss. How are you of the Tennessean?
Regular normal style. How are you?
Regular normal style. I like that. Lots of stuff to do today. Can the Tennessee Titans start a winning streak against the Raiders?
Possibly, yeah. It's possible.
It is possible. Technically, it is a possibility now that they have won one of the games that you need to create a streak. So we will discuss the matchup with the Raiders coming up. Pete Carroll had a lot to say about Cam Ward, and so we'll get into what the opposing coach this weekend had to say about Cam Ward. And obviously, he had some thoughts about some of the things that he wants to do better, so we'll play what Cam had to say yesterday. We got an injury report and a hypothetical. I love a good hypothetical where it's a counterfactual where nothing can be proven. Right or wrong. I love those conversations and those discussions about a draft decision that does relate to the game this weekend. So we will get into all of that. However, before we do, we're going to go Geek Corner right off the top rope.
Geek Corner.
Right off the top rope. Before we do, Sinkers Beverages. Make sure you check out that liquor store of the year, 4-time liquor store of the year, award-winning walk-in beer fridge as well. Tons of craft options there. Sign up for the in-crowd. You guys know the deal. They will give you cool stuff. Do you like cool stuff? Sign up for the in-crowd. They will not hit you with too much cool stuff. It's the right amount of
I like cool stuff.
I do too. And when it's not free, some of the stuff is free. They've got like free samples and stuff. They do tastings in the store. But cool stuff is generally not free, but it is very cool. So there's that. Many people are talking about it, Nick. Okay. All right. So Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Thumbs up if you are in the comment section. Notifications turned on. Please share the product. That's how people get in here. Eddie says Victory Thursday is seeing JC back at practice. The curse has been broken. Traylon Burks is gone. That is correct. He's been released. And the football gods lifted the curse the minute Tyler Lockett jumped on the ball. Look at this. Look at all the positive vibes and the energy
Joy.
in the comments.
I'm really bummed I'm about to suck this all down. Geek Corner. Did you guys know that Pete Carroll absolutely owns the Callahan family?
Super.
I went down a strange rabbit hole. They have played 20 games. Pete Carroll has coached in 20 games against Bill and Brian Callahan across college and pro football. The Callahan family is 5-15 against Pete Carroll. They have been outscored 576 to 326. This is incorporating games when Brian Callahan was a player at UCLA, games when Brian Callahan was a GA at UCLA, games when Bill Callahan was at Nebraska playing against USC, games when both of them were assistants in the 90s, the 49ers versus the Eagles, games when Callahan was a head coach, games when Pete Carroll was a head coach, all of these assistant coaches. And just totally strange to me, this also includes a 43-9 Super Bowl or whatever it was, that Seahawks-Broncos game. Brian Callahan was there. Brian Callahan has lost to Pete Carroll in every job he's had in his entire career, not counting the high school he coached at.
And the head coach of the Titans.
So far, yeah. So he lost to him as a player at UCLA. He lost to him as a graduate assistant at UCLA. He lost to him. He was 1-2 with him against as a Broncos coach. 0-1 with the Lions, and that was a playoff game. So he's 0-2 against Pete Carroll in the playoffs. 0-1 with the Raiders. He was only with the Raiders for 1 year, Brian Callahan. Played the Seahawks, lost. 1-1 with the Bengals. That's a 500 record. That's the best record we've had so far. Overall, not counting Bill's contributions, Brian has been outscored 397 to 211 in games against Pete Carroll. This is strange, right?
All right, so first of all, let's do some data analysis here.
Yeah.
Your 576 to 326 sounds really bad. It's 28-16, so it's not terrible, but like 28.
It's a 14-point loss, or 12-point loss, or whatever.
It's 28-16. I hear you, but a lot of times in college, you see those stats and you're like, oh, 39 to 8 average score. That's crazy. Anyway, I just want to point that out. That's a 28-16 score, which is far more of an NFL score than a college score for sure. It's weird, but it doesn't like. How many times have they matched up as head coaches? 0. And how many times has Pete and Bill matched up as head coaches when the two of them were head coaches?
I want to say 3 times.
So I think those matter a lot more. I think those need to carry a lot more weight and a lot more.
So let's look at that. 2006 USC Nebraska. USC wins 28-10.
How was that relevant to this week?
USC Nebraska. USC wins 49-31.
Seems irrelevant, but sure.
I'm telling you, this is just something I noticed falling down a rabbit hole. It is totally irrelevant, but it is interesting that I was just thinking about it. I'm like, oh, should I ask Callahan about that Super Bowl? And I was like, oh, I shouldn't ask about that Super Bowl. That was not a good Super Bowl for the Broncos. And then I kept looking, and I'm like, oh, this has happened a lot of times.
My first thought was like, are you going to ask Brian about this tomorrow or Friday? And actually, I agree. Like, that's not the right question. Because now I'm thinking through like, what's the right thing to get the most interesting answer? Which I think the most interesting answer is like, hey, you've gone up against Pete Carroll in a lot of different roles over a long period of time. And you could ask a question about Pete Carroll's evolution. You could ask a question about how he's changed. You could ask, hey, you could say, look, you've matched up with him 20 different times in a bunch of different roles, and you've not had a lot of success in those roles, in those matchups with Pete Carroll. What is it about his teams that have given you trouble? Or something like there's lots of ways you could ask it that aren't like, hey, what was the ride home like after you guys lost by 50 in the Super Bowl?
No, and I'm probably going to bring it up tomorrow as just like a light jokey kind of thing. But it is really interesting to me that just by coincidence, he was with the Lions for 2 years, had to play the Seahawks. He was with the Raiders for 1 year, had to play the Seahawks. It is a star-crossed situation. He comes to Tennessee and Pete Carroll retires. Pete Carroll is no longer in the NFL. Unretires first year, he has to play Pete Carroll. It is something that just fascinates me that when Brian Callahan was in college, I think it was 2002 to 2005 or something like that. That is the peak of the USC dynasty.
Yeah.
And Brian Callahan was at UCLA. Just like the guy who made his college tenure miserable, continuing to haunt him throughout his professional career, I think is a weirdly funny dynamic for this to be chasing. For what it's worth, Brian Callahan's first year as a GA at UCLA did upset USC. That did happen one time.
Will you ask him if he knew the Cocaine Cowboy when he was there? Here's what's fascinating about this. First of all, I love how your brain works, and I appreciate that no other show covering the Tennessee Titans will start with that topic and that and that information.
Absolutely correct. I thought you'd appreciate this.
I do. And I love the fact that it's completely irrelevant. And
you will love the fact.
Hang on.
Go ahead.
Well, but here's the thing: the comment section here, like this is what not even one game and one win in 1 week, but like 3 drives, 1 quarter will do to a fan base. They are hearing that Bill and Brian Callahan are incapable for decades of beating a human being at football, and every one of them is like, sounds like we're due. And if we had done this last week, they'd all be like, the complete opposite. They would, all you folks would be devastated by that statistic.
The depths of the research I had to do, Braden will appreciate. Some of you guys in the comments will appreciate. I looked up if the 1983 Illinois Fighting Illini played Pacific College just to be as thorough as possible on this research. They did not. But
good baseball program, Pacific College.
Yeah. Like. They played a really good schedule in the 80s. They were playing like 9 or 10 Power 5 opponents.
I got a good idea for like an off-season Geek Corner, which is like the most dominant college football programs you've never heard of. Because they're like, you go back to like the 40s and you're like, oh, why did Swanee win an SEC championship or whatever, something like that. I love those kind of stories back in the day. So,
but anyway, you want to talk about relevant? You want to talk about relevant Pete Carroll stuff?
Not really. that was okay.
Fun. Let me lead you in with a quote. I put this in a story. You can check it out, Tennessean.com, all that stuff. Here's what Pete Carroll said about Cam Ward yesterday at his press conference. Quote, he's got a unique style about him. Very athletic, very confident. He throws tough throws and he makes tough throws. He'll surprise you with his ability to find receivers in almost predicaments, but he finds ways to make things happen. He's got a scramble threat to him, but he's looking for his receivers. He's scrambling to throw, it seems. He poses a similar threat to what we faced in Chicago. Anyone else find that last part kind of interesting? The Cam Ward, Caleb Williams comparison? Because it's not something that immediately comes to mind.
No, oh man, my brain goes to like a million different places. First of all, like athletically, totally different players. But I
Sure.
think but obviously he's correct on sort of stylistically what they are trying to do. I think they're similar in some of the mistakes they still make as younger players.
Mhm.
And I think they're kind of, and this may be a generational thing because obviously we've had some fun conversations around Cam's use of language and how he talks, and very very Gen Z, is that right? Gen Z. And so and then there's this whole other thing, which is a whole other perception conversation around Caleb Williams, which I think the average football fan probably hears a comparison to Caleb Williams and says, "Oh God, that's not good." And I just don't buy that. Like, I'm not there. I don't think in 1 year we can just, with a coach who's been fired and a whole totally revamped offense, that we know exactly. I don't think we know what Cam Ward is. I don't think we know, like, it's going to take years to figure out who these guys are sometimes.
Sure.
And so I'm not opposed to the comparison the way maybe a fan might kind of recoil quickly instinctually from a Caleb Williams comparison. But I think when Pete Carroll's doing, he's watching film on how to attack a player, and he sees, I've got to attack this player in a very similar way than I've got to attack Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams was overwhelmingly the number one most talented player in his draft class, unlike Cam Ward. So if that's the comparison, I don't have a huge problem with it. I think that's more of a compliment than people realize.
So we're getting all the Aaron Rodgers talk in the comments. I thought about this comparison a lot, and the thing that I arrived at of what do they do the most similarly right now comes down to the way they both like to hold on to the football. Caleb, by far and away, leads the NFL in time to throw per attempt this year. He's the only one above 3 seconds. Cam, I think at 2.76 right now. He's tied for fourth in the NFL. They both like to hold on to the football. They are both guys who are going to scramble to throw, as Carroll said, and try to find their guys downfield. And the more I thought about that, the more that I kept thinking about this conversation we've been having all week about, well, Cam just needs to have his eyes where they're supposed to be. He just needs to set his feet and throw. The Callahan quote from after the win of what he did well in the second half that allowed that comeback to happen. And so now I'm sort of seeing two different versions of Cam Ward in opposition to each other. And I wanted to ask this to Braden, and you guys feel free to chime in the comments. Which version of Cam Ward is the good Cam you're looking for? Is it the guy who improvises, the guy who holds onto the football, the guy who creates plays by waiting and waiting and waiting? Or is it the decisive one who gets the ball out quickly, hits his mark, makes the incredible throw, one read and go type guy? Because I went back and I watched that comeback again yesterday. It was probably my third or fourth time watching it. And I just watched the condensed view of every single throw Cam made across those 3 drives. I think it was 18 throws if you count like throwaways and checkdowns and all that. There were only 3 times where I really saw Cam progress first read, second read, check down. For the most part, he was hitting a spot and he was throwing it. That isn't the Caleb Williams improvise, hold on to the ball 3 seconds at a time Cam, but he was succeeding. Meanwhile, you go back and watch the Miami tape, the best highlights tend to be run around, find somebody, make an incredible throw. Which version of the Cam do we want? Which fork in the road, which path would you prefer him take?
Well, I think in a perfect world, these paths reconnect a few places down the journey. If that makes sense. So like let's back up to the Aaron Rodgers stuff. Patrick Mahomes is the first and foremost Aaron Rodgers descendant. Like, correct. People have always been looking for comps for Patrick Mahomes, and I said it 10 years ago or 8 years ago. I was covering him in college, and I said, as someone who has watched literally every Aaron Rodgers throw in a Green Bay Packer uniform, very few since, he is the first and foremost. I learned watching Aaron Rodgers play football in the NFL. He's the first one, and I think a lot of you guys are right. It is like second generation. Because Cam Ward has said Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes is who I watch. That's who I care about, and that's who I pattern my game after. But a lot of them are coming off of Mahomes now, right? Like, Mahomes is adding to the Rodgers sort of style of play. Sure. And what's fascinating is that, like, to your point, to your question, I was thinking, like, what is it about Rodgers and now Mahomes that makes them truly special outside of just the natural gifts? Like, what is it about their playing style? And I think this goes to the same thing I've said about footwork. And I think it goes to the same thing I've said. You can talk about golf swings this way. You can talk about baseball swing. You could talk about a lot of pitching. You have to have all of the fundamental foundational stuff correct instinctually first, to where you're not thinking about it anymore, ever. It's just a part of your delivery. You get it correct. And that's a constant process. Brian Callahan has said this. You got to work on that throughout your entire career. Once you have, and that is the decisive player. That is the 3-step, foot is point. Like Brandon, you said you talked to Brandon, or no, yeah, you talked. Was it you or PK that talked to Brandon Allen about all this stuff? And like the subtle differences between a hitch or an out or a drag or a bench or a post or a corner, your footwork does change, but you got to be instinctual about it. It's got to just be second nature. You can't be thinking about it. And so once you have all of that, that's when you are allowed, with sheer talent, to just do the improvisation, throw off platform, use your special arm gifts that God gave you to do the thing that no other humans can do.
Yeah.
Because and I know that's not like a new kind of, earth-shattering development. But I think what it is you want your quarterback to be able most of the time to have to execute the decisive, definitive 1, 2-step, 3-step, plant your feet, throw where you're supposed to, eyes are in the right place, ball's in the right place, give them a chance to run with the ball. That's all. That's you have to do that 85, 90% of the time. And then once you have all of that mastered and it's all just, you're not thinking about it anymore, it's just there. That's when you are not allowed, like the coach lets you. I just mean like you create opportunities for yourself to do the other things in the NFL. Because in the college game, you can do all that shit you're talking about. In the college game, most of the time Cam Ward played at Miami, he was playing against a defense that could not compete with the players on his team. And so, yeah, you can just stand back there and run around like you're playing against, like you're a high schooler playing against the middle schooler, because you kind of were. And that is allowed and possible in college. It is not possible in the NFL. If you're going to be that special, you got to be Lamar. You got to be Josh Allen. You got to be Michael Vick. You got to be Randall Cunningham. You got to be Cam Newton. You got to be somebody extraordinary to be a true, like, I'm going to be more athletic than NFL defensive players.
Yeah.
So once you master, hey, everyone knows I am going to deliver this ball where it's supposed to be. The defense has to respect that. That's what allows you to then be this improvisational magician out in the open field and rolling left and rolling right and holding onto the ball. And Caleb Williams didn't do that. He went the other direction. He tried to do the process the other way, I think.
Yeah. And not to be guy who led the witness, but I did ask Cam about this. And the thing that you just said was essentially his answer. Because I asked, hey, what's more important? Because we hear all the time about, just put your eyes on the right place and throw. But we also hear all the time about, you got to take what the defense gives you. So which one's more important? And Cam was like, honestly, they're equally important. Like, yeah, you got to be able to throw where you're supposed to throw it, but you got to know when not to throw at things that were designed but aren't open. Yep. And I don't know that this is, again, we're not shattering glass here by saying what a quarterback needs to do is process his way through his progressions. Yes. We all understand that is fundamentally what quarterbacks need to be able to do to survive in the NFL. But when you're so early in your development and you are told, hey, just set your feet and throw, that's going to lead to mistakes. That is going to lead to, hey, I have tunnel vision. I was told to throw it here. I tried to fit it into a tight window. It got picked off. And that did happen a lot last year, I think we would say. Cam, his mistakes this year have not necessarily been tunnel vision mistakes. They have tended to be at the
some
end
of them
of
are
play mistakes.
Some of them are processing too.
Yeah.
James Foster did our film breakdown, of course, and a lot of the first 3 quarters were kind of the beginning of the video, and there's a lot of moments where he just doesn't see properly the things he's supposed to see in the order that he's supposed to see them. And that's going to happen. Like, that's not some indictment of like who he is as a player. That's just going to happen to a younger player. But there was I think we had a clip of, there was this sort of flood to the left where he does the inverted. He does sort of the back to the defense play action rollout, which they like doing with him to his left. and they had Gunnar Helm on a quick, it was basically 3 levels, right, with a backside post. And it's Helm to the flat, Chig at like 12, and you're forcing the defender to commit to the flat or to the deep. And if he drops deep, you go to Helm. If he jumps the flat route, you throw it to Chig. And both of them were open at different times during the play, and he missed both of them for some reason. And so, but his eyes go to the backside post, which they never should have done, because he had 2 open receivers at 2 different times. So tons of stuff to still get to for him. And actually, you know what? Let's play one of his answers. And this is from you. Of course, you shot this at his press conference yesterday. This is one of his answers about some of the stuff he needs to, he thinks he needs to work on around some of the catchable passes and his eyes and everything. So I'll just let you guys hear what he had to say.
Just a lot of easy stuff that I missed personally, especially me and the receiving core as a unit. A lot of times just really just ball placement, running to put the ball to make it a more catchable ball for them and a running ball for them, put them on their chest, let them turn their foot, get some next. So just continue to be accurate and then always take accountability and try to get better every day.
What do you got?
All right, so that's just a quick comment there from Cam about like accuracy, giving him a chance to receivers to run with the football, put his eyes in the right place is another one that I think Callahan mentioned on Sunday that we've talked about here. So I still think he's just got a lot of work to do with like taking the backyard football out of his game. You got to like deprogram and then build back up, right? Like that's kind of what you have to do with players in the NFL, especially triple option high school players who played it incarnate word in an air raid system that goes to Miami. Again, I don't know how many games he played in college where the other team had better players. There was a couple at Washington State where he played against Oregon, and I think he played against maybe Washington.
Yeah. And
like those teams had better players, but rarely did he do that. And so when you are better than the guy you're playing against most of the time, you don't have to do things perfectly.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. And I think that we can say comfortably that 5 games into his career, if this is the thing that we can say he's learning, this is good timing. Like he is on a good path. Because if he was still in the making tunnel vision mistakes phase of his career, it'd be understandable. It's 5 games in, but that would be come on, man, what was training camp for?
Yeah.
Mistakes. These are mistakes or lessons that can truly only be learned by playing more NFL football. And that seems like what he's doing.
Yeah. And I think there was a comment in here about like sort of was it Aaron's snap count? Coach Will says, and I'm not sure if you're talking about like his hard counts and like the ability to lure the defense or catch
I would imagine that's what he means. Yeah.
Changing personnel. I see that. And I think the final step for a quarterback is doing all of the stuff that we're talking about before the snap. Like that's what separates a great player from just a good NFL quarterback. And I don't think Tannehill had this. I don't think Mariota had this. I can't think of a Titan player that's maybe had this. I'm not even sure Mac had it. There are very few of them. And I don't think anyone's saying, because, there was the Mahomes, like, oh, he plays like Mahomes. I don't think we need to get to the point where we start talking about any quarterbacks that have the ability to do what Rodgers and Manning and Brady, and to some extent, I think Drew Brees as well. It is to be able to play, like it's the chess match pre-snap where you can play it all out in your head, 4 or 5 steps in advance, the moves that they're going to make. It's what makes people good at chess. And when Rodgers would do what he did, the only time he ran around is when the thing he already planned broke down, which didn't happen very often. So, but early in his career, that wasn't, he wasn't doing that stuff either. I mean, Mahomes had to sit for a full year and watch a very efficient player in Alex Smith and has an elite coach in Andy Reid designing an offense for him. So that is certainly not the case. Cam Ward does not get time to sit and learn, and he's not right now. He's not with an elite coach. So I think that's the step that I think if we get to the point of the conversation where we're saying like, man, that's a hell of a pre-snap read, and he changed the protection and he moved it over here and he got this route changed and he tweaked this route because of the coverage. And, I would love to know on the throw to Ridley with 34 seconds to go, I would love to know if they just happened to have that play called when Arizona had rolled up press man coverage in a situation where they should not have done that.
If we want to get,
I would love to know if they had a check there.
I can't specifically tell you that, but what I can tell you from talking to players after the game, when they're in 2 minute, they have what players have called a menu of 6 plays. There are 6 plays that they have installed in their package that they know back and forth. They are the plays they are the most comfortable with, and they're being called. It's not pure improvisation, but these plays are back of your hand kind of plays. So it was less about, oh, let's check to this, and it was more, you see what's on the field, you know exactly what to do on this play call.
We're running
Go
4.
do it.
We're
Yeah.
running number 4.
Go do it. So that's how that 2-minute drill came to life.
Yeah.
And if you guys want more like really hyper specific stuff about play calling and how the game came together, I wrote a whole article earlier in the week about the little out and up wheel fade that Gunnar Helm ran to get them down to the 1-yard line before their first touchdown. It was really fascinating how that play was put together and installed week of.
Very odd throw, but perfect, but a perfect throw.
And so, yeah, you can go check out the article, but generally what happened is the assistant quarterback's coach on Monday in pre-scout noticed that the Seahawks ran a similar play like that to a tight end on the left sideline and said, we have something similar that we can do if we invert the play. Let's try it.
Yeah.
And then on Wednesday, there's a film session, and Holtz and Callahan and Hart agree, all explain, okay, we're running this right. And then Cam takes that to Gunnar Helm, and him and Gunnar Helm work in practice Thursday and Friday, and they know they want to install it as a red zone play. And the first snap they get into the red zone is in the fourth quarter. And on their first snap from the red zone, they get the look they like, and they say, okay, we can force the defensive back onto the inside hip. It's just a fascinating
leverage him. Yeah.
Coaching comes together. So go check that out if you guys are like into actual play calling dynamics.
No, I love that. Bustin Diamond says, the last time the Titans won 2 games in a row, I was planning my wedding, and now our first child is due at the end of the month. You work. That's an up-tempo offense there, Diamond. Like, as someone who also, I think we were pregnant like 6 months into our marriage. We also ran an up-tempo offense as well. So congratulations to Diamond there.
Get in the comments, suggest football show themed names for their child, and Bustin will have to choose one. Guaranteed.
There's no Geek Corner's not going to work.
You know what's a beautiful name for a baby girl? Shotgun Willie's Barbecue.
Isn't there a TV commercial where all the kids are walking across the stage and they've all sold their naming rights? there's like a 5th grade. It's like a 5th grade graduation, and they're all walking across the stage, and they're like Uncle Tom's Massage Parlor. Congratulations on the graduation or whatever. Maybe a bad one that I chose there. Michael says, I like folks who are way underrating. I like how folks are way underrating how improved the Titans line is in the last 6 quarters. That's very specific, and how central that has been to other improvement. I do think that was their best game, and this is actually a perfect segue into our conversation, because we're going to talk J.C. Latham here in Injury Report. Let's hear from Callahan first about sort of the Raiders matchup. He kind of gives us a rundown of the team and where they're at and what he expects to see from Vegas over the weekend.
Another trip out west, another road game we got to go play, our 3rd one in a row here. Excited about the challenge. They're a team that while record-wise doesn't look great, you can see exactly why they're in the spot they're in. They've had a tremendous amount of back-breaking turnovers that have put their defense in really tough spots. Teams have capitalized on that, but when you watch just the tape alone and you look at the scheme and the players, there's a lot of good things happening there. They look like a Pete Carroll team on defense. All those traits are starting to show up. Offensively, we know Gino's a proven quarterback in this league, and when he gets hot, he's tough to deal with. They got some young players that are pretty talented, and I think it's going to be a hell of a road test for us. Another team on the road that we got to go play well. And I think the running back Ashton Genty's starting to come on. You're starting to see his talent show up. We'll see what Brock Bowers' status is, but he's obviously a dynamic player. Max Crosby is probably one of the premier players in this league, so we have to have a good plan for him. It felt like he almost tried to win the Chicago game in the first half by himself. It was a remarkable performance. So he's somebody we got to be aware of, and he can certainly wreck the game. So got our hands full in a bunch of different spots, and got to go play really well on the road again. Try to see if we can get ourselves 2 wins in a row.
All right, there you go. Callahan kind of starting the press conference with the obligatory rundown of what the Raiders are. First of all, before we get into the analysis of the game and the offensive line, which I do want to discuss, so thank you for the comment there. Sinkers Beverages, again, make sure you check them out. Go support them. Good local businesses. Both Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, 2 great supporters of all the Nashville sports, by the way, not just the Tennessee Titans, but the Nashville Predators start their season this evening. You got an open Cup championship for Nashville SC. You got SEC football, which we're going to talk about in a second as well. All that great stuff, of course, supported here by Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Boys Barbecue, our two great sponsors over on the Gold Standard podcast, which is every Wednesday at 1 o'clock live. You can listen to that one on the 440 Sports YouTube page, covering your Nashville Predators. They will be better. The Nashville Predators will be better. How much? I do not know, but they will be better. So make sure you go check out all the other great content across the 440 Sports Network. Okay. What about just like a football baby?
So he said named after favorite Eagles player and favorite former Iowa player. I'm gonna guess Carroll Buckhalter and Ricky Stanzi. We got a Stanzi Buckhalter diamond coming.
Didn't they just draft the cornerback? Who's the cornerback from Iowa?
Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean. Yeah, there you go. DeJean is a great name. Could be a boy, could be a girl. What's your last?
Diamond. I like
DeJean Diamond. Yeah, sounds like a Beyonce record. Look, Cooper DeJean's a good player. There's a lot of tight ends to pick from at Iowa. A lot of tight ends to pick from. Okay, so injury report coming out on the big one is J.C. Latham practicing. Otherwise, there's like 16 players that did not practice. A few of those were just veteran rest days. So what'd you make of the injury report first, and then we'll get to the offensive line and J.C. Latham and is he back and should they have him back and etc.
I mean, I don't know if we have time to go through the entire injury report. It was a lengthy one. For the most part, I don't think that anything is particularly serious when it comes to seeing like Jeffrey Simmons and Tony Pollard and these guys. It's getting to a point in the season where I genuinely was shocked to see Kevin Zeitler on the practice field. I'm just like, what are you doing out there, man? You're good. You don't need this. It's a walkthrough or a half walkthrough or whatever you want to call it kind of practice. So yeah, the one that I would monitor is Arden Key, just given the fact that he got hurt in game and is dealing with the same quad thigh injury that he was dealing with in game. That is a little bit worth tracking, but all the other stuff, regular, it's October type NFL practice report type stuff.
PK has alluded to that there is like that he has said, and this is not like reporting from him, but just sort of like some instinctual thought process, which is that he's concerned that kind of Sweat could go either direction this season, and that includes the injury, that includes coming back from the injury, that includes the health, that includes how in shape he's going to be, that includes all that stuff. And he's just like, I don't think they know what they're going to get out of this player, and that's sort of him speculating to some degree. Do you have any insight? Do you have any instincts around what's going on with T'Vondre Sweat at all? Now that the father to be is asking.
So I will tell you that is usually a Friday before it's possible kind of question for me. So I was going to ask that tomorrow. Yeah. This is his fourth game. You need to be on IR for 4 games before you can come back. The timeline would set up that he could be back next week, if possible. It's tough to say. With T'Vondre, he has missed so much time when it comes to preseason, when it comes to training camp, when it comes to in season so far. It's been a lot of different injuries. It's been an ankle, it's been an oblique, it's been a tonsillectomy.
Very random.
It doesn't seem good, but that doesn't mean that he's done for. Like it's a point where I really don't know what to make of it, and I'm curious what the answer becomes, because I wouldn't necessarily think T'Vondre is the kind of player who can be elevated back into practice and then be ready to play in 1 week.
Yeah.
I would guess, and like you said, this is not reporting, this is tea leaves and vibes, that he is somebody who might need to practice for a week or two before he can come off of IR, and he has that 21-day window.
Yeah.
But we'll see. We'll see how it happens. And I would say that Shai Tuttle and Sebastian Joseph Day and James Lynch and those guys have played pretty well in T'Vondre's absence, and Jeff has been good enough for both of them. So it hasn't been the most devastating injury.
So that's the other part of this, is that this Brownlee camp, Jarvis Brownlee camp of, it's hard to like talk about Brownlee without it getting like salacious real fast.
Yeah.
It's just like they had an opportunity to trade a player to get a little bit of better value, who maybe they didn't think fit in with them long term and maybe wasn't as good as people realized. or thought. And I had to go on Stillman's show, Stillman and Company, every day at 2:00. I was on with Stillman, and the day after the trade, and he was just like, they built their whole defense around Jarvis Brownlee. I was like, no, they didn't. That's not true at all. And so but there is like a PK has alluded to that where he says, I don't know if the Titans think if he is in the Brownlee camp of type of player or not. And that's a pretty weighted and heavy thing to say that has a lot of vague kind of directions you could take it. So he's asking, do you get that vibe, Sus?
I'm going to talk around the question as I normally do, but read between the lines as much as you want. I remember last year or earlier this year when we were up in Indy for the Combine, there were 7, 8, 9 Texas guys there. And I tried to ask as many of them as possible if they had a great Tavondre story that they'd like to share. And the answer for almost every single one of them was, yeah, T-Sweat, good teammate, like that guy. Like there wasn't this overwhelming, gigantic gregariousness of people seeming to have been very close to Tavondre. I think there is a distance to him. And that's not to say, oh, people dislike Tavondre. People love him. We're in the locker room. You see it. I see it.
Yeah.
People like being around him. But I think when you talk about the team captain identity type thing that Brinker and Borgonzi favored in this year's draft, I don't know if Tavondre would have been the first choice under this philosophy. That doesn't mean he's on the way out. That doesn't mean he doesn't fit. That doesn't mean he's not somebody who can work in this defense. I think he can work, and I think that as long as he's here, which he's under contract for 3 more years, and I don't foresee that changing, he's going to play because he's a really talented player and he's a really effective player, and the team is better when he's on the field. But I do think that it is fair to say that the personality profile of players they drafted in 25 is different than the personality profile of players they drafted in 24. And that's not at all breaking news.
I'm going to bury this 37 minutes into the show. There will be a day where we have the story of how he was drafted comes out. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Mario asked about Joey Sly. What's going on with the kicker here? I mean, obviously very questionable if he's fully healthy and on the field. Unless his problems have been related to the injury, which is possible.
Yeah, I think it was right calf injury on the injury report. He had a sleeve on his leg, one of those white compression sleeves when he was in the locker room, was not allowed to talk to media afterwards because of injury policy. So I cannot really expand past that. But they did sign a kicker to the practice squad, Matthew Wright, who kicked in a couple of games for the Titans last year. I believe made every kick he attempted. So insurance policy is there, but could just be a one-day thing.
All right, offensive line quickly. Are you on board with? Are you on board with the 6 quarters, the 2 games? The offensive line's been better all season. Are you on board with that? And then is this where J.C. Latham needs to be back on the field at right tackle?
2 quick ones. One, I was more impressed with the offensive line against Houston than I was against Arizona, more because the talent in Houston is so elevated, and the fact that that was not a complete washout of a game was something that I was deeply impressed by. Arizona, good defensive front, aggressive defensive front. Josh Sweat's a good player. Calais Campbell obviously has been a great player for a very long time, but neither of them are Daniil Hunter or Will Anderson. They did pretty much what was expected of them against Arizona, and that's good. I would say they overplayed their expectation against Houston. How much is J.C. Latham needed back? Max Crosby might be the premier pass rusher in the NFL who goes against right tackles. Most of the best pass rushers, when you're talking Micah Parsons and Myles Garrett, et cetera, tend to go against left tackles, tend to be blindside rushers. Max Crosby is a strong side rusher. I think 85-ish% of his rush snaps this year have come from the defense's left, offense's right. So if it is J.C. Latham, that is a much stronger option against Max Crosby than Oli Udoh. So how much do they need him back? This is the week where you most specifically need a right tackle in the entirety of the NFL.
Super. And Parsons, by the way, they move him all over the place,
They do.
all over the and so I am curious about like sort of if you're just that much better coming off one side because you're like your plant foot and your swim move or your counter move or your speed to power just happens to be so much better from one side. I think that's I think that's just interesting. Because it's always, everybody always talks a lot about the move on tackle position, right? Like going from left to right, it's this huge deal, and it's like, well, it's all the same skills, it's just inverted. That's the same for pass rushers. Like it's no different if you've got my spin move is better off the right edge, but my speed to power is better off the left edge. I find that's interesting to me from like a physiological standpoint. All right, do you have a hypothetical question you'd like to ask about J.C. Latham?
Yeah, no, I think this is a fun week to ask the question: would the Titans have been better off picking Brock Bowers? Let's talk about this, guys.
Well, hang on. Roma Dunze went 2 picks later.
Yeah.
And then you had Bowers 5 picks later.
So those would have been.
I think those are the two. I think those are the two that you can bring in.
And you can throw in Olu Fashanu, who was picked a couple of picks later. Those were the candidates who might have gone other than Latham once Joe Alt and Malik Neighbors were off the board.
Yeah, but it was Penix, McCarthy, Nix, all within the next 3 to 5 picks. I liked Fuaga. That was my favorite pick, but I thought that would require a trade back probably to get Fuaga. But again, Bowers is fascinating to me because now I'm obsessed with Kenyon Sadiq out of Oregon. Like he's this year's, freak tight end, the way Tyler Warren was last year's freak tight end, and the year before that was Brock Bowers. And so I am fascinated by Sadiq. I think that's a player that would benefit Cam Ward significantly if they could pair an elite Brock Bowers type player with a gunner helm, with another receiving. Maybe it's Io Manor, DK, and +1. Whoever takes over for Calvin Ridley next year.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of merit to approaching it the way the Bengals did, which is to use the very next biggest asset you had after acquiring Joe Burrow on the number one weapon for the quarterback, Jamar Chase. Now, I think they already had Higgins, right? I think they had Higgins before. Is that correct? I can't remember if they already had Higgins.
They had Higgins the year before.
Yeah.
Or no, they picked Higgins the same draft they picked Burrow. I think that he was like 33.
Okay, so they would have had Higgins already. They come back, and the very next, the most important asset, I think, was the number 4 pick the next year. And they drafted Jamar Chase. So I understand the strategy of acquiring an elite weapon that is going to help your quarterback immediately, regardless of how many games you're winning, regardless of how much time you have to protect yourself. Joe Burrow had no time to protect himself. He developed into an elite quarterback. Now, he might be broken, but he turned into an elite player. Jamar Chase certainly has to be credited with some of that. There's other things there, right? Obviously, you have to give Brian Callahan credit for that.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I'm thinking through just like draft dynamics, because like if you could go back to April 24th, 2024, or whatever it was, and say you're going to have the number 1 pick next year and you're going to pick a quarterback, make your decisions based on that.
I think Latham seems like the smarter pick.
Latham probably feels with the smarter pick, especially when looking at. So the Titans picked Devondre Sweat at 38 last year.
God.
The next offensive tackle picked was at 55. So there really was a run on offensive linemen at the end of the first round when Jordan Morgan and Troy Fautanu and Tyler Guyton and all those guys go. And there wasn't another significant group of offensive tackles until Patrick Paul goes 55, Blake Fisher goes 59, Roger Rosengarten goes 62, Kingsley Suamatea goes 63. So you wouldn't have been able to get that tackle. And remember, they were drafting a left tackle. They were not drafting a right tackle at the moment.
And what's fascinating is if you had gone position player there, right? Tight end or receiver, like Keon Coleman and Ladd McConkey went 1 and 2 in the second round. Immediately after Pearsall and Leggett finished the first round. Xavier Worthy was in that first round draft. Brian Thomas, all of that was off the board. Jalen Polk went the pick before Sweat. You don't have another receiver until 52. Adonai Mitchell. You don't. That's not. Absolutely not. Then you have Ben Sinnott out of Kansas State, who's a really good football player, but he is not a weapon. That was it. in the second round for receivers and tight ends. Malachi Corley by the Jets in what? Who? He was a third-round pick. Then you got Jermaine Burton. What? No, in the third round. Roman Wilson hasn't done anything at all for Pittsburgh. Jalen McMillan is a solid player, I think, for Tampa as a third-round pick. But Luke McCaffrey, Jatavion Sanders is a tight end who plays in the early fourth round. The point is like the next 50 picks, two rounds, there was nothing there. If you would have gone tackle and said, no, we're going to come back and get a playmaker for our quarterback we're going to draft next year, there was nobody there to take. You had to take your playmaker at 7 or in that range, which there were Brian Thomas, Rome Odunze, and Brock Bowers, all three guys that would make Cam Ward better right now. Although Thomas is kind of having a little sophomore deal right now.
He's had a couple of good games after 3 really bad ones to start the year. Yeah. The thing that becomes interesting is if you take Bowers 7 and don't draft that tackle is still your biggest need going into the next round. But if you're just taking BPA, that's where you start to think, oh, do you draft Cooper DeJean went right after the T'Vondre Sweat pick, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Kamari Lassiter.
Braden Fisk was the next pick.
Yeah. But so if it's not Sweat, if it's not Fisk, if you're not just picking defensive tackle for need, you could have gotten 3 genuine starting level cornerbacks 4 rounds ahead of when you picked Brownlee.
Edgerrin Cooper.
So
good player.
It's fun playing this revisionist history game Titans should have just picked Kamari Lassiter. That's obvious. And I was beating that drum at the time.
I talked about Brock Bowers at 7. We talked about that, and I thought this guy is too good to he's the best player in college football. So I am not surprised that Brock Bowers has been good. I'm also not surprised that Brock Bowers has been hurt, which is a concern. So
and JC Latham has also been hurt. So it's
T'Vondre Sweat.
It's football. Football players do get hurt. I think that in order to make this conversation about Brock Bowers work, your time machine needs to go back about a month and a half earlier than we're setting it. You do need to go get a tackle in free agency. Yeah. That is the only way to make this situation work, because you can't play an entire NFL season with left tackle John Ojukwu, right tackle Nicholas Petit-Frere.
Yeah.
Will Levis would not have survived even a modicum of the season.
The Fisk over Sweat pick haunts me to this day. They took Sweat over Fisk, but that is part of the story, Eddie, that will be told at some point in the future. That is part of the story. I would have taken Cooper DeJean over Sweat. I think I think Lassiter is another good one. You could have increased your secondary there. I just want us to trade back and acquire more picks. I tend to agree with that. This is Eddie says Jordan Tyson come on down, wide receiver out of Arizona State, who does look like wide receiver 1. He does not look like a top 10 pick though, so maybe he moves his way into that. But he's a very, very good player, so keep an eye on him. They play a lot of good games too, Arizona State, close, dramatic games.
Receivers are going to climb, just like this time last year. We were talking about there was no receiver that looked like a top 10 pick. Nobody deserved it, and then Tet McMillan climbed into the top 10.
Yeah, well, Tet was always an elite player, though, so that's true.
Jordan Tyson's an elite player.
Yeah, that's true. Reading between the lines, don't be surprised if they keep Sweat out to get him 100% and move him at the deadline from LT3. I agree with everything except for those last 5 words. What is T'Vondre Sweat worth to the Tennessee Titans? Is somebody coming to get an injured second-year player who has 1 career sack? Who is coming to get T'Vondre Sweat? And they're not trade. If they want to trade Simmons, they could trade Simmons for some good property, some good value.
Yeah, getting a 4th or 5th round pick for a guy you just picked 38th overall is bad investment.
Yeah, completely agree. Look, Coach Will says, when in doubt, trust OSU. I don't love Carnell Tate, the wide receiver out of Ohio State this year, but you guys knew how much I loved Emeka Ibuka. I wanted that guy so badly. Just saying. All right, Sinkers Beverages and Shotgun Willie's Barbecue. Make sure you go support good local business. Tennessean.com. Subscribe for good journalism. Pay for good journalism. Go read all of Nick Suss's written geek corners. They're everywhere, all over the website. Great stuff. Always must read stuff each and every week if you're a Titans fan. So make sure you check out Nick's stuff there, Tennessean. And of course, the best brisket in the city, best beer fridge in the city. These are all award-winning folks. Nick, I know we've discussed how many awards you should have won, but you won a lot of awards as a player and a coach. So go read Nick Suss. All right, I got an SEC question for you here. Do you want to give a prediction, by the way, for the game? Like, do you think we have a winning streak here?
I think my written prediction was 16-14 Titans. I do not expect this to be a pretty game. I do not expect this to be a fun to watch game, but I think I did pick the Titans in this one.
As a keeper league owner of Ashton Genty, I'm excited.
But before we get into college, don't log off because this is actually about the NFL.
Yeah,
This
so
is a college conversation that is about the NFL.
Yeah, I need y'all, the Titan NFL fan, to sort of answer this question, because when I ask this question of college fan, I get a very clear answer every year for 20 years, which is everything that happens in the college game is getting more and more sort of professionalized from an NFL standpoint. And this year in the SEC in particular, and frankly around the country with Clemson and Penn State struggling, we have a broader range of teams that will make the playoff and have the ability to win 3 or 4 games in the tournament than I've ever seen in my entire career. The talent has been dispersed. It is spread out through reductions and everything, whether it's scholarship limitations, whether it's NIL, whether it's portal, starting time, everything, resources, it's all spread out. And the result of that is going to be a more balanced and more parity-driven sport. And in the SEC right now, I know Nick's going to say Alabama, but if I ask anyone else each week who is the best team in the SEC, they could answer with a different team almost every single week. I still trust Georgia. I trust Alabama. Ole Miss could be great. Texas A&M is still undefeated. Missouri's got a huge one against Bama this weekend. Oklahoma's quarterback is hurt. John Mateer, maybe he plays this weekend in the Red River Shootout against Texas. Again, Tennessee's pretty salty. There's so many good teams, and they all feel like they're pretty balanced. And so my question for NFL fan, because I've asked this of college fan, and the answer is always absolutely not. They don't want the game to be more like the NFL. But I ask NFL fan, are you more interested in watching college football? Are you more into the SEC this year, knowing that the NFL is your priority on Sunday because of the parity, because of the unpredictable nature? Like, are you good with the league getting more sports, college football getting more like the NFL? Is that a positive that will lure you into the game? And that's kind of what I want to know from diehard Titan fan and the people, most of you watching the show, like, are you more likely to become a casual college football fan because the game is becoming more like the NFL?
I will start with a prop that I had within reach so I can use it. I spent a lot of time around these guys. I've spent a lot of time in my life in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, around the Southern Miss Golden Eagles.
Who was the receiver that was a 5-star? DeAndre Brown?
I believe that's right.
He broke his leg?
5-star.
Look at
when I think about what kind of parity is needed in college football, it's easy to think about it from the Penn State, Texas, and Clemson perspective. But I think sometimes you have to start by thinking of your low-level G5s. What does parity mean when you are Louisiana Monroe? What does parity mean when you are Southern Miss? When you're one of the schools that just budget-wise will never be able to keep up. You don't have the alumni base. You don't have the donor base. You don't have the conference revenue. What does parity mean when you are inherently disadvantaged? Compared to what does parity mean when you're Mississippi State, where you are disadvantaged, but not to a degree that you can't have a season like 2014, where you're 1 win away from the playoff, where you're the number 1 team in the college football playoff rankings. I think that in order to bring NFL-style parity to college football will have to shrink. Fundamentally, an FBS with 132 teams?
136.
136 teams.
I mean, I would argue they're playing different sports. The group of 5.
But they are also in the league. So, like, if we're talking about parity from a only SEC, Big 10, ACC, Big 12 perspective, I think we are getting closer to there being parity in college football. If we're talking about it from all 136, this is the least parity there's ever been in the history of college football.
Right. And if I'm asking, will this make you a casual college football fan? We're clearly not talking about Tulane versus Memphis, which would be a phenomenal football game. We are talking about, like, on a Saturday, are you willing to watch Indiana, Oregon this weekend? right? You're not an SC, you're not a fan of Indy. You're not from Indiana. You're not from Oregon. You're not a Big Ten fan. You live in the South. You like the Titans, but that is number 2 versus number 7. Could be a semifinal type of matchup. Could be 2 of the best 5 teams in America because it's more interesting and more balanced. And all of a sudden, Indiana's a story, right? Now you've got Missouri in the SEC undefeated, Ole Miss undefeated, A&M undefeated. I've never seen that before. Indiana. You're telling me Indiana, Missouri, Texas A&M are undefeated? What do we? This is the upside down. And so I don't like, but I'm a diehard, so I can't speak to this because I see Garrett's in here. The NFL can never match their traditions, nor will the NFL crowds ever match tens of thousands of drunk students, no matter what organizational rules may come to college football. Look, I like college football more because of the imperfections and the charm. It's kind of like liking the MLS versus EPL. If you watch Nashville SC, you're going to see it's going to be an action. It's going to be kind of crazy and weird. You're going to have 3-goal comebacks, which never happen in the EPL. You get up 3-0 in the EPL, it's like 35-0 in the NFL. Nobody's making a comeback. Jason says, I absolutely love more parity, and I'm definitely an NFL fan first. So I am clearly speaking about
Yeah, no, I got
the
sidetracked.
top 8, the top 80, the top 70, and is that? I think the key is it's never going to be all the way to the NFL. So as long as you this is the beauty of college football. You can't take a team and just move it across the country. Like owners, there's no owners, right? So it is rooted more. It's rooted in streets and campuses and locations and colors and the geography of your area and the culture of your area and food and music and fight songs. And, my grandpa walked on this street, and I'm going to take my daughter back where I walked on these streets when I went to college here. Like, you can't change any of that stuff. And that is richer, in my opinion. That's a richer story and a richer experience as a fan. But PK's the opposite. PK watches NFL football, and he says, I want to see the greatest athletes do the most physically grueling, difficult thing possible. And that is not what college football is.
Yeah.
But the drama isn't any different, in my opinion, at the end of a game. That Tennessee-Georgia game was spectacular.
Sure.
That was a fantastic football game.
Game.
South Carolina-Missouri was a great football game this year. So I'm just curious, if more people are involved, would they be more involved because South Carolina-Missouri is now a story?
I don't think so. If I'm being devil's advocate here, I think that if you look at the trends across the most viewed games in the history of college football, it's never sneaky upstart versus sneaky upstart. People tune in to watch a good Iron Bowl. If it's number 1 Alabama versus number 4 Auburn, people are going to tune in.
Well,
Ohio State, Michigan. Yeah.
The college basketball tournament is a great example of this. We all love Cinderella on the first weekend. We all watch Cinderella on the first weekend. We don't want Cinderella in the Final Four because ratings for VCU and George Mason and Butler were down. But when North Carolina plays Villanova or North Carolina plays Duke or Duke plays Michigan State, ratings go way up. We love Cinderella early. This is why I think the college playoff in football is better, obviously, for a number of reasons. But this year I'm thinking in Indiana trying to go on the road and beat Alabama, or Alabama on the road beating Indiana, that is a Cinderella-ish type of story.
Yeah.
And that would be huge in the first round. I don't know if it would draw ratings in the championship.
Yeah, 2 things. 1, to this day, the highest viewed, highest rated college football game on television ever is still USC Texas 2005, because it was 2 of the best teams ever playing each other in the Rose Bowl.
Also an elite football game, yeah.
Just a great, great football game. Second thing, and this is a side note, but let's say, hypothetically, there is a Titans coaching change here in the next 3-4 months. He's not the first person I call. He's not the second person I call. Curt Cignetti's one of the first 5 people I call, just to hear him out.
Oh, Titans, you mean? I thought you were talking about UCLA calling Brian.
No.
Because I assume that would happen.
It could happen, yeah. But
follow-up question: would you leave to go be the head coach of UCLA?
No.
Depends on how much you trust what Chad and Mike are telling you behind closed doors right now.
No.
We believe in you, Brian. We'll keep you here for the whole. You'll be here for 5 years. We believe in you. 30-0 against Vrabel. Amy?
No.
What are you doing here, Amy?
But yeah, I'm just saying, I want to know what it is that has allowed Curt Cignetti to do what he's done. Even if you don't hire him, I would just pick his brain. That is a man who has turned around. Is it fair to describe Indiana?
He doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Is my take.
Is it fair to describe Indiana as the worst Power 5 program in the history of college football?
No, but it's among them.
It's bottom 10.
They've had some good chunks, like Antoine Randall L, and like they've had some decent chunks. I would say they are among the worst power programs in college football. Yeah.
And in his tenure at Indiana, they are 17-2.
Yeah, they're sick.
Like it is unbelievable what he's done.
Yeah.
I want to hear how that man has done what he has done at every stop. Everywhere he goes, this happens. I want to pick that man's brain.
I know this sounds reductive, but I think it is like if you could take the phrase I have no fucks to give and you could turn that into a coaching culture, I think that's what it is. Like he just is like, we don't care about what you think about anything, about what kind of defense we're running, about how we're recruiting, about what we say in the media. We don't care. And I think that it permeates everything that they do.
No, and I mean, I invented this thing a couple of weeks ago talking about Cignetti, where I was talking about the coach trash talk matrix, where your x-axis is willing to trash talk versus not willing to trash talk, and the y-axis is corny versus cool. And Cignetti is up in this top right corner of willing to trash talk and cool.
But also super. I mean, he's also very corny. I feel like he's just like an old dad.
But when I'm thinking about corny, I'm talking about like, sorry, Dabo. I'm talking about Dabo.
Okay,
like,
all right.
Like that is
I got you.
Coach Corny. Eli Drinkwitz is Coach Corny in a way that
Eli's got a. It's funny you mentioned him.
Trash talk.
It's
willing
funny.
To trash talk.
It is funny you mentioned Eli Drinkwitz because I think he and Kirk Cignetti are they kind of have similar. I think Eli's a little bit more like used car salesman.
Yeah,
but
Eli
they're similar. They're kind of nerdy and dorky, but like really willing to trash talk. And so I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, that was fun what Eli did yesterday on the teleconference. You see that?
I did not. What did he do?
He was on before DeBoer, and he stayed on the weekly teleconference to ask DeBoer a question. Oh, and he just raises his hand, and the second question is like, "You going to wear that black sweatshirt though?"
That's such a Cignetti thing to do. Eli has a more punchable face. That is 100%. That's 100% true. Future Florida head football coach Eli Drinkwitz has a very punchable face. That's right. Or is it future Florida football coach James Franklin? I don't know which one it is.
I think they'll tell you it's Lane Kiffin.
They want it to be Lane Kiffin. I don't think it's going to be, but I've heard from a number of people that are very well connected on this stuff that's the name that they want. Like, and that there's a little bit more interest than people realize at Ole Miss. But I think Lane's really happy where he is. I think he's very, very happy. And I've talked to a few players for Titans that played for him. We drafted a bunch of those guys. They drafted a bunch of those guys or signed a bunch of those guys in the last few years, and they're all like in love with the guy. Like the new version of him is,
You know who knows for sure that Florida wants Lane Kiffin? Is Lane Kiffin.
Lane Kiffin for sure. Yeah,
he knows.
There's no question about that. Yeah, yeah, that's for sure. All right, what else you got? It's a great weekend for college football, and hopefully the Titans can get a win and go to two in a row. How about that?
I'll be a connecting flight through Austin. So is there any misery that I need to absorb while I'm there?
Like food wise?
No, just like the University of Texas will be nearby.
No,
do I have to like absorb?
I do want to know what's wrong with them. I find it very interesting. Like their defense is so good, and they just gave up like a ton of points to it. And honestly, this is the NFLification of college football to some degree. This is like exactly a perfect way to end it. Their game against Florida last week, they have one of the best defenses statistically and personnel. Florida could manage 60 passing yards against Miami 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. And they have almost 500 yards of offense going into the fourth quarter. Florida does. That is the most NFL thing that has ever happened to SEC teams that clearly felt like they were on two totally different tracks. That's an NFL thing. You
can't make me quit DJ Lagway.
I agree.
You can't make me quit that man.
I don't know if they can quit Billy Napier. It's so weird. It's such a strange situation in Florida. They got a ton of tough games, but huge rivalries. You got Auburn at home. You got Missouri at home, and Vegas is telling you Missouri and Auburn are going to play very well in those games. Texas is an underdog against Oklahoma. Is John Mateer going to play? Who knows? Tennessee could continue its winning ways, so we'll see. It's going to be a great weekend for college football and a big weekend. Safe travels to you going out to Vegas. Of course, enjoy it. Sinkers Beverages, Shotgun Willie's Barbecue, and this is where I normally would say have a great weekend. I'll talk to you on Monday, but I will not talk to you next week. We're going to have some new folks doing some work on the 440 Sports Network while I take my wife for a 40th birthday and 10th anniversary trip out of the country. I am not going to watch any football for a week. So, gonna have some cool voices for you guys filling in and having a good time next week. But stay tuned to all the great shows across the 440 Sports Network. Nick, Tennessean.com. Make sure you check that out. Nick, always a pleasure, my guy. Thanks for hanging out.
Happy birthday / anniversary to you and the wife.
Yeah, it's my 40th birthday celebration, but that was 3 years ago. So better late than never, I suppose.
You can just call it a 43rd birthday celebration. There's nothing wrong with celebrating your 43rd birthday.
Who's the comedian that's like, you shouldn't celebrate any birthdays that unless they end in a 0? After like 30.
I just feel like celebrate when you feel like celebrating, man.
I think you should celebrate every day you wake up.
Nobody knows my birthday. It's nice. I can tell you, we were in the Titans press box talking about birthdays on
your birthday,
and nobody knew it was my birthday, and it is glorious.
I do spend. My wife always wonders. She goes, happy birthday. What do you want to do today? I'm like, I would like to get to the point where no one tells me happy birthday. I want to see if we can do that. So you and I are both sick, twisted individuals. But happy birthday.
Yeah, it was a couple months ago. Becca and I went to Waffle House at like 12:05 a.m. That's what I wanted to do.
So weird.
We went to Waffle House.
Such a weird person.
I don't dispute that.
I appreciate you, man. I appreciate it. All right. Yeah, I quote a lot. This is so weird, but it speaks to start every day with just appreciating the fact that you got a chance to be on this earth that day. I know that's really cheesy, but I do it to my kids all the time, and I'm quoting Jim Harbaugh when I do it. They get out of the car, and I'm like, who's got it better than us, girls? And they're like, nobody, Dad. Oh, it's a great day to be alive. Have a great trip. Go Titans. Enjoy the college football. And, yeah, we'll talk to you guys next time. Peace and love.